Good morning, good morning. Glad you're with us today. Those of you in the room, we appreciate you being in the room. It's a lot easier to preach with people in the room. Those of you in us, glad that you've joined us. If you're on the porch, in the cafe, online, wherever you are, we're glad you're here. For those of you new, we have been going through the book of James for about 7.5 years. No, I'm kidding, about 3 months. But we're just going verse by verse, and so we're taking that through because James is such an incredible book. It is just such an important letter. Remember, those of you that have been with us, James is the little brother of Jesus, and he knows more about Jesus than anybody during the first century. He's a leader in a church, and all of the church has been scattered through persecution. And so James is writing this letter to help you and I know how to live our life following Jesus. He is saying that, hey, I want you to see that if you're going to be a follower, you need to follow him, and he lived differently than we do, and this is how he did it. And so for those of you in the room today, we're going to talk about priorities. What is your priority? Do you have dreams? Do you have goals, hopes? Do you have a vision? And I know most of you do. Most of you have something in your life that you're hoping you get to next. Many of you, you're trying to graduate college so you can get a job and start paying off those loans. I know what that's like. I'm paying for one of my son's college loans. It's horrible. So you're trying to get a job and pay off school loans. Some of you, you're so tired of being single, you're just ready for that next stage, and you're praying, and my hope is that God sends me someone very quickly. For some of you, you're married and you're ready for children, or you're ready to buy that first house, or you want to take a jump in your career. For those of you my age, you're ready for an empty nest, because that's very exciting, very exciting. You maybe can downsize and, take a vacation. Biggest raise you get is when your kids leave home. And so some of you are just all different stages. Now, for those of you in the room that are planners, you know that you can't get to your goals, your dreams, or your vision without making a plan. Some of you in the room are like me. I've been planning, I think, since I was in the first grade. I think I was putting together an agenda, putting together a plan for my life, knowing where I wanted to be in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. I just had all of these plans, and I laid them out, and I just loved doing it. I've told you before that I'll make a to-do list, put something on it I've already done, just so I can mark it off. I'm getting counseling. So anyway, some of you in the room are just like that. If you're that person, you're just type A, you love to make a list, you have a plan, you got a plan for everything. Just raise your hand. Raise your hand. There you go. Those are my people. And you're so happy because you got to raise your hand. You got to do something finally in church. Here, I'll raise my hand. I'm a planner. I'm a doer. Now, you're probably sitting next to somebody who's going to love this sermon way too much. They're going to love this message because you're not into planning. You're not into planning at all. You don't want to plan. God's got a plan. I hope one of us has a plan. God has a plan. And so I'm just going to follow God, and whatever God says, I wake up in a new world every morning, and I'm happy about it. I don't need no budget. I don't need no plan. I'm just going to live my life. If you're like that, I'm going to ask you to do something very difficult because it takes a little planning. Hold your hand up. There you go. There's a start. You guys just did something. I'm so proud of you. You did something. And you didn't have to plan. Now, once again, there's nothing wrong with planning. There's nothing wrong with planning. But James is looking at a group of people and he's saying, listen, it's okay to have a plan, but you need to understand a few things. You need to see some things in Jesus' life that's going to help you with this plan, because you're busy and some of you are in the workforce and you're making plans for your business and you want to accomplish this and accomplish this and accomplish this. And you look at the world to help you. But I want you to understand, the world doesn't want Jesus as a part of the message. There are many of you in the room and you've got your dreams, your goals, your hopes, your plans, but God's not in it. In fact, you haven't even consulted God. in it because this is what you want. This is your plan. And the world around you, they want Jesus to be compartmentalized. And many people that say they're followers have put Jesus in a compartment. And it's just a part of our life. We show up on the weekend because Jesus is part of our life. If somebody asks you, are you a believer? Of course I'm a believer. Of course I'm a believer. I believe in God. I go to church. But it doesn't impact the rest of your life. Many of you live like you're an atheist. You just show up on Sunday, but your business plan, your dating plan, your home plan, your parenting plan, all of those plans don't include God. And if you're following God, that relationship is supposed to influence everything in your life. Everything in your life is to be influenced by your relationship to God. It's all to be in His plan, not your own. You are a slave to Him. You are submissive to Him. That's why you call Him Lord. But if you're never asking Him, if you're never listening to Him, how in the world can we say we're followers? So I'm encouraging you today, especially those of you in the room that are planners. James gives some great advice. And I wish I would have looked at this passage a long time ago and applied it to my life. Because when I became pastor of Ferris Avenue Church, when I became pastor, it was in 1990. I was 26 years old. And can I tell you, I came to this church with a plan. I had a very detailed plan. In 1990, I saw this. I saw relocating this church. I saw changing the name of the church. I saw bringing people outside the church in, and I saw a large church in my plan. And I began to work toward that plan as soon as I set foot on the ground. And I knew that if this year we need to do this year we need to do this year we need to do this. And can I tell you, the first 5 years, how successful that was? The first 5 years, we went from about 120, 130, we were at 300, and we were ready to take that next step. We were blowing and going. We were ready. In 1995, we decided that we were going to take that next step and we're going to build a big building, a bigger building at that time. And we were ready, and we got up there. We had this capital fund drive, which was where, the pastor begs for money. And so we stood up, and I did it all. I did everything I was supposed to do, and I'm ready for that next step. And it failed so miserable, I just can't even describe it. It failed miserably. And so I pretty much was done. 5 years, that's enough time. I'm going to go to the next better place. I'm going to go to a place that will listen to what I say and will follow me. Here we go. I'm on my way. And then God broke in. And God broke me. And I began to see some things from a different perspective. And I began to understand some things that we're going to talk about today that I wish I could have understood before. And we watched the process from 95 to 97. We watched this church go from 300 to 150. It just fell apart. Everything fell apart. And when it was back down there, about 2 years later in 97, and we were running about 150, I remember very specifically praying a prayer. And that prayer was, God, I belong to you. And I'm going to serve this church for the rest of my life, whether they ever grow or ever add another person. I'm going to love the people here, and I'm going to follow you, and none of that other stuff matters. I don't have a plan anymore, God. I just want your plan. I just want your plan. And that's exactly what James is saying. James is looking at the people just like us who are busy in their lives, they're busy in their family, they're busy in their business, they're busy in their hobbies, they're doing all these things. And he's saying, now listen, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go to this or that city, spend a year there, carry on business and make money. Why, you don't even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if it's the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that. As it is, you boast in your arrogant schemes. All such boasting is evil. If anyone then knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, it is sin for them. Now, honestly, this is very easy to understand. I could actually read this verse and we could leave. We're not. Because I want to explain it, and I'm going to over-explain it. A lot of you think, well, I can't understand the Bible. Yes, you can. You don't want to understand the Bible. Because this passage makes it very clear how we're to live our lives if we're followers. And look at the first thing it says. You're saying you're going to do this, this, and this. How arrogant are you? You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Life is uncertain. Some of you are thinking about your lunch plans right now. You're thinking about what you're going to do the rest of the day. You're thinking about your week and what you're going to do Thanksgiving. Listen, that is as arrogant as it can be because we don't know that we'll make it home today. We have no idea. And so James is saying, stop living like you're in control. Stop living like you're sovereign. Stop saying, this is what I'm going to do, and this is what I'm going to do, and this is what I'm going to do. You don't know what's in the future. You have no idea. Life is uncertain at best. And then he goes on and says, it's not only uncertain, it's over quickly. It's like a vapor. You appear and then you're gone. How encouraging is that? Aren't you glad you came this morning? Preacher said I was going to die. Shouldn't surprise you. James is trying to explain to us, listen, life is uncertain. You don't know what's going to happen in the days ahead. Your life is like a mist. It appears for a little while, and then it's gone. So he says, because that is the way we live our life, we need to live our life with a priority, and it needs to be, God, what is your will for my life? God, what is your will for my life? God, if this is your will, then I'll do it. Now, I want, if it's God's will, to be more than a cliche. Because some of you grew up in church, and this week you got that family member, and they say that every time they turn around. Oh, if the Lord willing. You're at Thanksgiving like, could you pass the turkey? Like, if the Lord willing, I will. You're like, if the Lord willing, I won't stab you with my fork. They just wear you out. And they add it to everything. I'll see you in the morning, Lord willing. That's not what this is about. This is deeper than that. This is more than that. This is James saying you need to submit yourself to God because life is uncertain and you don't know what's next. And so you need to submit yourself to God because life is short and you make these plans. I'm going to do this when. I'm going to do this if. I'm going to do this. You don't know. So there's some things you need to be doing and things you need to stop doing because you belong to the Lord. So if the Lord's willing, this is what I hope to do. If the Lord's willing, this is what I hope is next. He says, this is the Lord's will. Don't be arrogant. He goes on, if anyone knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, now listen close. If you know there's something good you're supposed to be doing and you don't do it, it is a sin. Now, that's rough. I want to say it again. So if you know to do something good and you're not doing it, it is a what? It's a sin. James is saying it's this important. When something you know is good and you are waiting for the right time, or you're waiting until this season is over, or you're waiting until this debt is paid off, or you're waiting until you have more time, it's sin. Now get the seriousness of this. So if you're sitting there today and you know in your marriage there's something wrong, you know in your marriage you need to be spending some quality time together. You know in your marriage you're supposed to have a date night and you're supposed to invest in each other and you're supposed to encourage the other person. And men, you've heard us say you are to love your wives. And women, you've heard us say you are to respect your husband. And you're sitting there going, I'm going to do that as soon as. That's, well, not all of you got it. So if you know you're supposed to invest in your marriage and you're not, it is exactly. If you know your kids love you and want to be with you and want you invested in them, if you know that your kids need to be in church and need to be at camp and they need you, they love for you to sit down and read to them, but you're too busy to do that good thing. See, listen, he says life is short, life is quick, and let me tell you, when you get older, life just goes faster. It just flies. It is an amazing thing. And I know it's because a year to an 8-year-old is a long time, but to a 50-year-old, that ain't long. I experienced it the other day. I went to my doctor. She said, you need your annual eye exam. I'm like, I did that 2 weeks ago. She's like, yeah, last November you did that. And when you were a kid, don't you remember Thanksgiving to Christmas was like 30 years, wasn't it? I mean, the longest 3 hours of my life is when I woke up Christmas morning at 3 o'clock and my mom wouldn't let me go in the living room till 6. That was forever. Now I looked up and Thanksgiving's Thursday. Everybody in here that's 50 and over like, what? We just did Thanksgiving. Life goes fast. And so you got those kids at home. You need to enjoy your children. I know you're out there, some of you are like, man, I just endure my children. And that's a shame because let me tell you, you ask any grandparent in the room and there's nothing they wouldn't trade for just going back one day and enjoying their kids. You need to enjoy your kids. Your kids need your quality time and quantity of time. If you know it's good to be there for your children and you're not there for your children, it is. Wow. So you understand. You know. There's some other things in the room that you know. There's other things, for those of you online, and you're ready to turn it off, I get that. But there's some in your room that know you need to make Jesus your Lord and Savior. You know you need to accept Jesus. You have heard about him, you know about him, but you haven't met him. And you're waiting. You're waiting. Remember, life is a vapor, but you're waiting. You know it's a good thing, but you're not doing it, so it's sin. You know you need to accept Jesus. You know you need to put your life in your hands. I talked to a guy one time. He told me he was going to accept Jesus when he got back from Cancun. Because he'd already paid for the trip. And some of you don't laugh because you act like you're lost in Cancun. But this guy's like, man, as soon as I get back, I'm going to get saved. And I'm thinking, dude, you could get eaten by a shark. Drink some bad alcohol and die. There's no telling. Because life is a vapor. Some of you are like, man, I'm going to clean up my life. And as soon as I get this straight, I'm going to accept Jesus. If you know to do good and you don't do it, it's sin. So accept Jesus. For some of you, it's baptism. Such a simple thing, but you've made it into something huge. Oh, I can't do that. I got baptized when I was a kid. No, you got wet in public when you were a kid. Because baptism happens after salvation. You're like, oh, my mama will kill me if I... You want your mama mad or God? If you know you're supposed to follow him in baptism and it's a command and you refuse to do it, it's a good thing, but you don't do it, it is sin. Amazing. Some of you know you need to be in Bible study. You need to be studying the word. You need to be learning. You need to be in a group of people. You need to be around others. You need to be talking about the Bible and praying for others. You know you're supposed to do that, but you're saying, you know what? As soon as soccer is over, as soon as my kids aren't so busy, I'm out every night of the week. I'll get to that someday. You know it's good. You know you're supposed to do it. If you don't do the good you know you do, it is sin. You're kind of getting the hang of this. What about serving? We talk about it all the time here, don't we? You're supposed to be serving. If you're going to follow Jesus, you're to serve inside the church and outside. And we've got needs all over the place, and we talk about them, and God stirs your heart, and you know you're supposed to be serving, but you've made excuses. Well, I go camping every other week. Well, I've got sports, my kids. I've got to do this. I'll serve in the future. If you know to do good and don't, it's sin. Let's just be honest. God is looking at you saying, listen, I have your life. You say you belong to me. This is what I want you to do. You can't say no and Lord in the same breath. What about this one? Giving. Got quiet, except for one guy in the back. He must give. Giving. You know you're supposed to give. I don't have to preach that. You have no doubt the Bible talks about it. You've read it. You've heard it. Preachers have said it forever. And you're like, well, you know what? The church, look at those screens. I don't have, the church got plenty of money. They don't need my money. And my answer is, you're right. We don't need your money. God doesn't need your money, but he wants you to give it. He wants you to trust him because that's good. And if you know the good you're supposed to do, but don't do it, didn't get as many of you that time. Kind of fall out on me. It's sin. It's sin. What about inviting people into the gospel? What about telling them about what you found? What about inviting them to church to sit by you? You know you're supposed to do that, but you make excuses like it's not a good time, or I don't know if I'm going to be there Sunday, or that person doesn't want to know Jesus, or if you know it's a good thing to do and you know you're supposed to do it and you don't do it, I know it's getting monotonous, but let's get one more time. It is what? Sin. There's a lot more sins out there than getting drunk and taking drugs and committing adultery. There are sins when God has asked you to do something specifically and you said, it's a sin. How did Jesus live his life? I mean, I know some of you, you're just stressed out right now because I've just added all these things to your plate. And you're thinking, honestly, Pastor, I don't have time. You know why you don't have time? Some of you think you're more important than Jesus and more essential than Jesus. Jesus came to the earth and he was limited to one spot, one place in time. He had 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and he accomplished everything he needed to accomplish in 33 years. How did he do that? How did he do that? Jesus spent 30 years being a carpenter's apprentice. Why 30? Why not 32? Why not 35? Why not 20? He spent 30 years before he even started ministry. And then he started ministry and he invited some people in, but he didn't invite others. He healed some people, but he didn't heal others. He cured people of demon possession, but there were people with demon possession that he didn't go to. How did he know what to do? How did he live this life? How did he do that? If you went and asked him and could see him face to face, he'd say, I did everything the Father told me to do and nothing he didn't. I did everything the Father told me to do. There are times that Jesus, because he was human, went off by himself, retreated. There are times that Jesus took a nap. And God says, that's just as holy as serving me. That's just as holy as showing up for church. You need to do the things that I've called you to do and let go of the things that I haven't told you to do. And folks, some of you need to clear your plate because there's things you are doing that keep you from doing the best things. And if you know to do good and don't, it's sin. So get rid of this other stuff. Let it go. Now, I know for Jesus, it's easier, right? I mean, he heard God clearly. None of us in here are Jesus. And that's why for us, we say, the Lord willing. I'm always scared if somebody tells me, God told me. So I'm like, yeah. But God willing. In 97, when I said, God willing, this is your church. He did far greater things than I ever dreamed or imagined. Some of the things that I had planned came to be. But he took it a step further. We had no idea of the thousands of people that would come. We had no idea of the thousands of people that could watch online from all over the world. We had no idea that we would only have one beautiful campus in the heart of Waxahachie. We'd be able to build another beautiful campus in Ennis. We had no idea. So I can tell you, God's plan is better than ours. But until you get quiet and listen, until you take some things off your plate and start doing the things that God has told you to do, you can't live your best life. Living your best life means not compartmentalizing Jesus, but making him your entire life. In fact, he has influence on everything. So what is the good God's telling you to do? What is the good in your family? Listen, I've been at the side of people's bed when they were gonna die. Never once have I heard somebody say, bring out my trophies, I'd like to look at them. I've never heard them say, bring out my bank account, I'd like to see how much money I've saved. I've never heard them ask for their last performance review so they can look through it. You know what they tell me? I wish I'd have spent more time with my family. I wish I hadn't let that conflict separate us all those years. I wish I'd have served people. That's what they regret. So life is short. Do you want to come to the end of it with regrets? Or do you want to rejoice that if the Lord willing, you've done his plan for your life? He has the best plan. You just have to look forward. In fact, all of you already know. Right now, you know what good he wants you to do. You say, well, how can I know? If it's good, it's from God. If it's selfish, it's from you. If it's giving to others, it's from God. If it's helping a family at Thanksgiving, it's from God. If it's giving to a mission fund, it's from God. If it's going on a mission trip, it's from God. Anything good that comes to your heart and mind right now is from God. And if you refuse to do it, it is sin. I hope that you can live this life and live it to the best possible way by just saying, yes, the Lord willing, this is what I'm going to do. Would you bow with me? Father, we thank you. We thank you for what you do. We thank you for who you are. Father, help us not to be arrogant and not to believe we're sovereign. God, we don't know what tomorrow holds. Father, help us go to Scripture and look for your will and your plan. Help us to seek wise counsel, to surround ourselves with people who want the same thing you want. God, help us to allow the Holy Spirit to speak clearly to us. And then help us plan accordingly. For many in the room, God, they need to take some things off their plate that are not important. God, they're letting the unimportant things crowd out the most important things they can do. We pray for them to have clarity today and sin no more.
Hey, thanks again for joining us here at the Avenue. It's been a good morning, right? The message is pretty simple. The message is pretty simple. It's just walk in obedience. Walk in obedience every day, moment by moment, and we can do it, okay? Stand with me. Hey, it's Thanksgiving week. Let me encourage you. Heavy on the turkey, light on the dressing, okay? You're dismissed. God bless you.
If you have any questions or need prayer, send us a message at info@theavenuechurch.com. We are always here for you. Looking for ways to give from where you are? Text the amount to 84321. And don't forget to subscribe and follow us on social media to stay in the loop. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you next week.